Okay, to do the suction leak repair, you're going to need some parts. You're going to need a hacksaw to cut the pipe, or a pipe cutting tool. You're going to need some glue for the pipes. I use this particular one. And you're going to need some plasto joint stick, which is for this part here, and this is the part you're going to put on the pump. So you're going to use the joint stick, and you're going to put it here to seal it. You're going to need some fittings, and I'll list all these in the comments so you know which fittings you need to get. And you need a big wrench to get the old pipe off, and I'll show you how to do that when I do the repair. And you're going to need some kind of measuring device also. Now what happened at this particular pump, it ran dry and started sucking air. So I replaced this fitting a couple weeks ago. It's very easy to do. This one had a union, so I was able to just fix that. But like I mentioned in my pump troubleshooting, generally when this one leaks, this also melted. So I'll show you what happens when after that melted. And when your pump runs dry, it builds up so much heat that it even melts the pump basket. As you can see here, it melted this pump basket down. And so with that amount of heat, it's definitely going to melt these connections here. And that's why they have to be replaced. And you can hear the water draining down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this and all this piping to this point. And I'll go ahead and show you how I do that. Okay, this is the threaded fitting that goes right here to replace that. As you can see, the pipe sits all the way down to this part right here from the inside. So it sits right to this ring. And then I'll show you the elbow I'm going to use. And as you can see with the elbow, the pipe also sits down in there too. That's how I'm going to measure it before I cut it, so I know I'm going to get the right height. So I'm going to go ahead and measure. I'll show you how I do that. You can definitely measure it with a ruler, but I like to just match up the pipe here. I'm going to mark it with a Sharpie. That way I know when I put the other one back on, it's going to actually be the same height to connect with no problem. Let me get my Sharp out. Okay, so I marked on the elbow where the pipe goes into it on the existing one, and right down here, and I'm going to measure from here to here. That way I know how much pipe I need to cut here to here. Okay, so after I measured, it came out to about 4¼ inches, so I'm going to cut that pipe right now. Now it's really not that complicated. You just got to make sure you measure the pipe correctly, and also measure before you make any cuts. That way you can line everything up. And what I'm going to do here is, since this has fittings here extending all the way to the pipe, I'm going to use a special thing called a fitting extender. So this actually goes over this fitting here, like this. I'll show you here. This fitting extender actually sets over the 2-inch fitting, and so it's going to actually fit over this fitting here, and I'm going to put another fitting on top of it. When I do it, I'll show you as it's being done. And I'm going to measure this pipe here so I get an actual good cut. You can also measure by just actually putting the fitting up against the pipe. It's another way to do it. So I got this one here against this pipe, so I know I'm going to mark it right here where my finger is at, and then I'll match the elbow. And that's another way to measure it, just by putting the fittings together without glue, and you'll have a good idea of how it matches up. So after I lined it up, I marked the pipe with the Sharpie where I'm going to cut it. That way it all fits in there good. Okay, so I'm going to cut the pipe, and then before I do any cutting, I'm going to match everything up to make sure everything is equal. Okay, so without gluing any of the pipes, I've matched it up, and it's going to fit perfectly once I put everything together and glue it. As you can see, both pipes are lined up perfectly here. And I'm going to do the same thing with this part of the pipe. And as you can see, when this goes in the pump, it's actually going to be even with the existing pipe. That way everything will go together real smoothly. Okay, so now I'm going to cut right here to remove this pipe. Okay, actually I cut this pipe. I do have enough room, I think, to turn it without having to cut this. So I just brace the pump. Sorry. I brace the pump, and you can actually turn this pipe with your hand, and that's how I'm going to get the thread out. I'm going to keep turning this until the thread comes out. I don't even need my wrench. Now if you don't have this kind of spacing, of course, definitely cut here and you can just take that out. But I have enough spacing where I can actually move the equipment to do it like this. You can see it just threads right out. And you can also install a union to make it easier to do the replacement later. It'll just untwist. You can just take this part off, like this one here. But I'm going to show you how the easy way to do it without the union. I don't really like these either because they tend to fail also and leak. Okay, so now we're going to get the joint stick and put a generous amount on the thread here. This takes the place of the piping tape. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on here, and I'll show you how much I put on. Okay, Okay, now I put a lot of this on. I like to always go over than under. So this whole thread is definitely covered with the joint stick. I'm going to go ahead and put this thread on. Okay, it just simply threads in to the pump. So I'm going to turn it all the way to the bottom, and then I'm going to use my wrench to give it a kind of final turn. You want to really get it on there snug with the wrench. I'm going to keep going here. Okay, you can see how that's flush against the pump. That's how you want it. That's not going to leak for sure. Okay, now we're going to apply the pipe glue. You want to be very generous when you apply this. I always put liberal amounts of it. I use the gray one because it gives me more time than the blue one as far as drying, so I can actually move the pipes if I need to. So you want to just be very generous with the amount you put in here on the fittings, because otherwise it'll leak for sure. I'm going to put some on the outside of this also before I put it in there. Okay, and I'm going to stick it together and just press down really hard. It goes all the way in. So that one's in. I'm going to do the same thing here with glue here and inside the elbow. And I also got a generous amount of glue on both the fittings. I'm going to push this down and make sure it's straight when I put it down and lined up with this pipe. Okay, that's good. I'm going to build this part real quick the same way I did that, and I'm going to put it together. So I'm going to build the fitting extender by putting this fitting here on the end of this. Okay, so that's all built, and I'm going to go ahead and put it together now. Okay, I put glue on outside that 2-inch fitting and inside the fitting extender. So I'm going to slide. I'm able to push the motor up a little bit to get this pipe on, and then I'm going to push it all together now that I had pushed that a little bit. And then I just slid everything back into place and everything. Okay, I'm going to fill this with water now. Check to see if everything's good. Okay, so I turned that off, and as you can see, there's no leak, so there's no more air leak going on here, this part of the pipe.